Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Collin Manley, bringing you another episode. We got those Sundays and Wednesday baseball episodes coming your way. Got a lot of things to talk about. I'm looking forward to this. I actually had the day to watch a great deal of baseball. It feels like I'm catching a lot of games, but I never really get to just sit down and watch. And as we head into Labor Day weekend, hey, I had that privilege, and it was a great thing to have, which led to us having a lot of time to think about the stuff that we wanted to talk about today on the baseball podcast. And, you know, it's a long list. I mean, we got to do our news and noise. We have to cover that stuff like we do every time because there's so much injury news, especially in our crazy 60-game season. These injuries become so much more important. So we got to start with talking with a little bit of that. We also want to take a look at the newest starting pitching power rankings that were released from MLB.com. This was fun to look at. We have quite a bit of movement this week, which was exciting. Some guys that are coming on this list that weren't in previous weeks, definitely deserving something we have to look at. We also want to talk about, well, things that we're looking forward to for the rest of the season. I have some storylines, some things on my mind that definitely need to be discussed, what I'm going to be watching until we reach Game 60 for all our teams. And then lastly, we have to talk about some players that just are not getting enough love this season. Everything has been jam-packed in, so that means some guys are going to be missed with all of the great baseball they're giving us, or maybe just potentially we know who they are, we're hearing about them a little bit, but we got to give the shout out and give them a little bit more love because it just hasn't been enough. Seems like a good list. A lot of stuff to talk about for sure. But we're going to be starting off with that news and noise around the league, around the MLB, getting you up to date on all 30 teams in Major League Baseball. And we're going to start off with a contract extension for general manager Mike Rizzo for the Washington Nationals. He gets a 3-year contract extension. Seems very earned considering the fact, well, he just won a World Series. He's done a great job putting that team together. Now, obviously, it's a down year for the Nationals. Injuries playing a big part. They have just not had their full, healthy team together, and they're working on house money. When you win a World Series, a title really in any industry, obviously you don't want to go into a rebuild right after. But we're realistic. It's hard to repeat. It's hard to do these things over again very quickly. So once you get that one title, you have a little bit of leeway, I feel like, for the next couple of years. And when you get that title and you did such a great job building a roster like Rizzo did, you're definitely going to get some extended time, and power to the Nationals for giving him a 3-year contract extension. That was announced on Saturday. When it comes to some injury news, holy man, we have a lot of stuff going on. Jose Altuve for the Astros. He has been struggling this season, to put it very lightly. Well, he was placed on the 10-day IL on Saturday as the club dealt with the reality that his right knee sprain will need more than a day or two to heal. He's eligible to return September 14th. Altuve injured the knee during a slide into third base on Thursday. Also of concern is that the same knee has limited him over the last 2 months of the 2018 season and required some off-season surgery. So they're hoping that it's not some sort of lingering effect coming back with this. You can just tell something's up with Altuve. It's not a great season. I know a lot of people like to make the jokes about, well, he doesn't have the trash can help this year. There's stuff going on there. But he's been so great for so long, former MVP. You don't like to see these guys struggle as much as they are, even if you're against the Astros and wanting to see them be a little down this year. Hoping to see Altuve get things going again, hopefully later in the season. Coming back to those Washington Nationals, well, they scratched Juan Soto from the lineup of Game 1 of a doubleheader against the Braves on Friday because of left elbow soreness. He also missed Game 2, but an MR came back clean, according to their manager, Dave Martinez. He was quoted saying, "We're going to give him a couple days. He's pretty tender. It's his throwing elbow, so we're going to see how it feels tomorrow and then go from there." I'm assuming he's going to need a couple of days off. With the Nationals being kind of behind in the National League East, not looking like they're going to be a playoff team this year, no reason to definitely have any. Well, you don't need to push Juan Soto, period, this season. You don't need to rush anything, get him back. He is a future player, so incredibly young. Don't do anything stupid when it comes to Juan Soto. Josh Harrison was also added to the starting lineup in Soto's place, but had to exit the first game of Friday's doubleheader after being hit by a pitch that caused a left forearm contusion. Soto and Harrison both remained out of the lineup Saturday. For the Atlanta Braves, some pitching news finally that I'm sure they're looking forward to hearing about. Cole Hamels is going to throw live batting practice on Sunday afternoon. A great step forward as the veteran left-hander who missed all of spring training with a shoulder problem and then some left triceps tendonitis a week into their summer camp has been just on the shelf for way too long. The Braves is a team we talked about that didn't make really a big push for pitching at the trade deadline with Fried pitching so well, calling up Ian Anderson. He's been doing well for them in the short stint. They're probably hoping that this is kind of like a mid-season acquisition. Hamels coming back to help out the team. Ozzie Albies will take batting practice for a third straight day on Sunday, and then possibly could begin playing simulated games at the Braves' alternate training site. He has been sidelined since August 5th with a right wrist bone contusion. Tough one to say there. If all goes well over the next few days, the second baseman could be activated from the IL on Wednesday or Thursday. So even more news that I'm sure the Braves are loving to hear. Beef up that lineup, get things going in the right direction as we end the season, or at least getting towards the end of the season. Those New York Yankees still dealing with a great amount of injuries. Well, that continued Friday as the club placed both Gio Urshela and Jonathan Loziga on the 10-day IL list. Urshela is dealing with a bone spur in his right elbow, while Loziga is sidelined by an unspecified non-COVID medical condition. Definitely going to be waiting for more news to be coming there. Some good news, though, for the Yankees. Gleyber Torres, who had been dealing with a left hamstring and quadriceps strains, was back in the lineup Saturday after being activated from the injured list. Giancarlo Stanton, who had been dealing with a left hamstring strain, is running at about 75 to 80%, according to manager Aaron Boone, but there is still no set date for his return to the lineup, with the Yankees recently losing Aaron Judge, a big bat, a lot of pop in their lineup. The return of Stanton would be huge. He's most likely just going to be playing in that DH position, so they're going to be working him up to where he can hit and run some bases. Not really worrying about much fielding, I imagine. He may be back sooner than later, which would be a big help to the Yankees. The Toronto Blue Jays, prior to Friday's doubleheader against the Red Sox at Fenway Park, manager Charlie Montoyo shared some positive news about Bo Bichette, who's been out with a sprained right knee but ramped up his rehab recently. He was quoted saying he's doing a lot better than we thought he was going to be at this time. He was running bases yesterday, hit batting practice. Then tomorrow we're going to have a simulated game for him. That simulated game on Saturday will include Ken Giles facing Bichette at Fenway Park. This will be Giles' second session facing a live hitter. And while the Blue Jays are hesitant to put any timeline on him for his return, it's possible that the club is going to consider activating him if he comes out feeling strong, which would be big news considering how hot the Blue Jays have been as of recent, moving up the AL East and trying to cement themselves into a playoff spot into the American League. So two big parts for them moving forward. We'll see when they get to come back and get on the field. For the Tampa Bay Rays, Ryan Yarbrough, who has been out since August 28th with some left groin tightness, well, he threw a bullpen session on Friday. Rays manager Kevin Cash said that there were no setbacks. The next time that the left-hander throws could be in a game, actually. Also for the Rays, Oliver Drake is progressing well, but manager Kevin Cash indicated that he is still likely about a week away from returning, so just a little bit more time for him. But any pitching to come back to the Rays is great for them, as well as they're making that push as one of the best teams in baseball going towards the postseason. But I'm sure they would love to try their hardest to hold on to that number one spot going into it. For the Detroit Tigers, Nico Goodrum on the 10-day IL as of Saturday, retroactive to Wednesday, which means he could be eligible to return September 12th against the White Sox. But with the oblique bothering him on his left-handed swing, unpredictable nature of oblique injuries, these ones are really hard to predict. Willie Castro could get the bulk of the playing time. Going forward, if Goodrum returns, he might be limited in swinging just right-handed, an interesting thing when it comes to switch hitters, being limited to what you can actually do. But then also when we start looking at lineups, he might not be thrown in there to start against the lefty, potentially based on what matchups the team is trying to play. The Miami Marlins, Eliezer Hernandez has been transferred to the 60-day IL, ending his season. You hate to see these longer IL stints. You just don't have any time to come back. So losing Hernandez, who was having a great season, is a pretty big blow to the Marlins. One thing that they thought was a strength was their starting rotation. 6 starts, 25-year-old right-hander. He was 1-0, 3.16 ERA, 34 strikeouts, and just 5 walks in 25 and 2/3 innings. The Marlins, another team that's kind of just believing that they can make a run to this postseason when it comes to the National League. The National League is wide open, very wide open. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. So you just don't want to see any hits coming for a team in this season. The Arizona Cardinals placed Kwang Hyun Kim on the 10-day IL on Saturday. On Friday morning, Kim experienced some abdominal pain on his right side, was sent immediately to an emergency room at a Chicago hospital, diagnosed with a kidney ailment, and remained in the hospital until Saturday afternoon as the pain had gone away. In another move for the Cardinals, they had activated Andrew Miller, who had some left shoulder soreness from the 10-day IL, so sending a little bit of bullpen help back for St. Louis. Would love to see that. Andrew Miller, when he is on, he is one of the best at the back end of a bullpen, a very powerful, good arm. So that's just positive news for St. Louis Cardinals fans out there for sure. Moving over to the Minnesota Twins, Max Kepler is landed on the IL on Friday with a left adductor strain, an issue that Rocco Baldelli has described as very mild, should only keep the right fielder sidelined for that minimum 10 days. Hopefully they don't think it's going to have to go much past that. The Twins didn't make a move also to place Luis Arias on the IL after the second baseman exited Wednesday with a left patellar soreness. Baldelli said it's a reoccurrence of the persistent knee issues that have bothered Arias throughout the season, but the Twins feel that he can manage the injury without the need for any type of extended stint off the field on the IL. They think he's going to be able to come back and be a go most of the time and manage this, something he's going to be able to overcome throughout the season. And then lastly, news that is just devastating and sad. Even if Baltimore was falling out of things a little bit, the Orioles have placed Anthony Santander on the IL Saturday with a right oblique strain that is expected to sideline him for at least several weeks, according to manager Brandon Hyde. With about 3 weeks of games remaining, it's looking like a possibility that Santander won't play again this season. He was having just a great year when it comes to the Baltimore Orioles. Their offense had been huge for them for a lot of the season, and Santander being a big reason why. 37 games played, 153 at-bats, 24 runs, 40 hits. He was batting .261, but 11 home runs, 32 RBIs, top 10 in the league with those numbers. you just don't want to lose any offensive production as you're going down the season. Like I said, falling off a little bit in the AL East, in the AL period. And when you lose a big bat like that, it's only going to hurt you even more. So that's going to be it for news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on all 30 teams in the MLB. We have a great deal of things that we want to talk about. The next thing that I want to dive into, I want to talk about the newest starting pitcher power rankings that came out on MLB.com. This is one of the coolest things I think they do. We've made a dive into other positions as well. We want to talk about the top 10. We want to talk about some guys that are just on the outside. How do we feel about these? We're going to take a dive into that here coming up on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Well, it has to be said, one of the things that has been the most fun to watch this season would have to be all of the great starting pitching. Now, we knew coming into this year that there's always going to be a couple guys that have hot stretches that are going to look great in a 60-game sample. I didn't expect this many, and that's for sure talking about the fact that I was kind of expecting a great deal of offensive numbers to be huge. And I love the surprise. I am someone that growing up loved to pitch, loved to be on the mound. It's somewhere where if you are on your game, it's one of the most dominant positions you can have. We talk about other sports about how great quarterbacks can be. When you look at hockey, how great a goalie can be to change things. Basketball, I mean, that's just superstars all around. But baseball, when you have a top-notch, dominant pitcher, these guys can change games, change series, do some great things. So we got to take a look at the MLB.com power rankings for pitchers voted on by a bunch of writers for MLB.com, and it's just a fun discussion. And we have to start things off with the other pitchers receiving votes, our honorable mention guys, because just even looking at this list, this is some incredible names. Some very incredible names considering what they have done this season. Those sitting just on the outside looking in. Sixto Sanchez for the Marlins. Marlins starting pitching has been pretty good. Sanchez has been having a strong season for them. He is just on the outside looking in. Max Scherzer, who's been around with some, injury issues. He hasn't been living up to the full potential that he usually is, but he's sitting on the outside looking in. Garrett Cole, who kind of was riding a very long regular season winning streak in when he took the mound, on the outside looking in. Tyler Glasnow for the Rays. Kenta Maeda for the Twins, who under the radar low-key had been having a great season. Numbers have come up a little bit as of recent, but he's still been good. Hyunjin Ryu for the Blue Jays. That move for them to go get a top starter, taking him away from the Dodgers, signing him up in free agency is looking better and better. And then Sonny Gray, who has been just outstanding for the Cincinnati Reds this season. Now, he was obviously very dominant early. That ERA has ballooned up a little bit to 3.19, but a 3.19 ERA is still pretty stinking good. That's just 7 names of great players on the outside looking in. So that's what really kind of puts a lot of validity into this list, which we're going to keep counting her down. Number 10, Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. Him coming back healthy has been awesome. Leading the first place Dodgers pitching with a 1.50 ERA since he debuted on August 2nd. He hasn't allowed more than a run in 5 of his 6 starts. an 11 strikeout game against the Mariners. He also became the third youngest pitcher to reach 2,500 strikeouts in a victory over the Diamondbacks. He has been great reaching that major milestone. And with everything that the Dodgers have going for them offensively, getting great pitching from the veteran lefty Kershaw only helps them more moving forward. He's sitting at just number 10, and I imagine as this goes on, if he continues to pitch well, obviously, he's going to climb up this list. He hadn't been ranked previously, so a nice climb for Kershaw at the moment. Number 9 on this list, Zach Gallen for the Diamondbacks. He's a guy I want to talk about later as well. They have it written so well in here, flying under the radar compared to other names. But he has been great. For a Diamondback team that we were worried about their pitching, he has stepped up to the plate and been great. 1.80 ERA. 7 shutout innings of one-hit ball against the Dodgers in his first start of September. I mean, young pitcher, 25 years old, leads the National League in innings pitched and hasn't allowed more than 1 run in his last 4 starts. There's not much you can say about Zach Gallen that isn't amazing. He's given 7 quality starts. He's only 1-0 on the season. It's kind of heartbreaking to look at how good his numbers are and then how sad some of it is at the same time. So Zach Gallen sitting at 9. At number 8, Lucas Giolito for the White Sox. He wasn't ranked either. So 10, 9, and 8. Kershaw, Gallen, and Giolito all not ranked coming into this week previously. And when it comes down to it, throw a no-hitter, you're going to get people's attention, and that's what he did. Giolito has just been a strong answer for what the White Sox needed, pitching. 3.14 ERA. That's good. That's good enough. You're going to be doing great things with that. He's got offense behind him, and if he can continue to put guys down, keep the runs down, he's going to help a White Sox team that has aspirations to go on to a World Series. And with everything that he has health-wise behind him, you kind of got to believe that they have a chance. That's for sure. So Giolito coming in at 8. Number 7, a small slide down for Lance Lynn of the Rangers. He previously was ranked at number 4, now 7. Lynn was slotted here, allowing 6 runs against the Astros. His ERA went up to 2.67 after that start, sliding him in the AL ERA race. But he still has a resume for this season that has been quite good. At a 2.67 ERA, like we said, 4-2 on the season, 57 innings pitched, averaging almost 10 strikeouts a game, 1.8 WAR. That whip is still under 1 as well. He's on a team where he just doesn't have a lot of help. The offensive production is not there for the Texas Rangers, but he continues to give quality start after quality start. In his 9 games started, 7 of them are quality starts. If he was just on a better team, who knows how we'd be talking about this. Last year, 246 strikeouts, great season. This year, 63 through 57 and 1/3. So continuing to get people out via strikeouts, great to see. Lance Lynn, I wish he was on another team. I really do. This is the discussion. I'm still kind of upset and bothered that the Rangers didn't move him when his stock was so high. It's just disappointing. Who knows what his season could look like the rest of the way. Number 6, Trevor Bauer for the Reds. Last week at 7. Lost a couple games since the rankings were released last. Something they pointed out to. But his ERA is still at 2.13. He's on pace to have a great season with that. Also, lower than half of his ERA from last season. 4.48 ERA last season. He has been that good. Some of his best strikeout numbers is he's got 54 strikeouts so far on the season. That's a great thing. He continues to be a bright spot for Cincinnati. 7 games started, 5 quality starts. he's another dude that I wondered about being moved. He's going to be a free agent. His whip is low. His WAR is good. Almost 13 strikeouts a game. He's got great numbers. He's just setting himself up for a nice payday. And he's an interesting guy when it comes to this offseason as well, because he talked about how he's going to be signing a bunch of one-year contracts, trying to continue to get the most value he can. I find it an interesting move, considering that next year's money isn't necessarily guaranteed and is in question. But we'll see where this ends up going. There's definitely a lot of things to be talking about. Number 5, Aaron Nola for the Phillies. Previously was at 8. A guy that was in Cy Young conversations not too long ago. Last year was not a great year for him. He's bringing it back. 57 strikeouts, 44 innings, 2.45 ERA. 5 quality starts, 4-2 record. You can't always take records for what it is. 11.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. That whip, .86. Doing a lot of great things for a Phillies team that's starting to surge in the right direction as well. As they're trying to make the push towards the postseason, I'm sure that they are over the moon glad to have Nola throwing as well as he is, for sure. Max Fried for the Braves, all the way up to number 4. Max Fried has continued to be one of my favorite guys to talk about. Was not ranked on the last list, but he has been so good to move up into a top 5 position, and this is something that I don't think many people can argue. Just going off what MLB.com has, the 26-year-olds having the breakout season for the Braves. They lost Mike Soroka to an injury. Was considered to be their ace coming into the season. Fried ranks 2nd in the National League ERA at 1.6. Well, at least that was at the time of the writing this. Now he's currently at 1.98 in those 9 starts, still sitting at a 6-0 record, 50 innings pitched. He has given up, what do we got here? Only 11 earned runs on the season. Strikeouts aren't necessarily his thing, as he's averaging 8.5 per 9 innings, still almost 1 an inning. That whip is just a little bit over 1 at 1.06, but a 2.7 WAR being a very strong showing from a starting pitcher. The only interesting stat that I would say on him is 9 games started, that 6-0 record, only considered to have 4 quality starts on the year. Maybe a little bit concerning, but Fried has been great regardless, so you can't really knock him too much for that. Probably pretty deserving to be this high up in those power rankings. And then let's get to these 3, because these 3 are kind of really good right now. Yu Darvish. We need to be talking about him more. 1.44 ERA. Superb. 8 games started, 7-1 record. 50 innings pitched, 63 strikeouts, 11.3 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has been throwing a great deal of cutters this season. And then following it up with a curveball that has been incredibly slow but effective. And then he's able to come back with a fastball that tops out at almost 98 miles per hour. His mix between speeds and pitches is getting people off balance, and he has just been very effective throughout the season. It's been one of Yu's best career seasons. He's starting to figure things out for the Cubs in a way that we have not seen from him, and it's been exciting to watch. Only 8 earned runs on the season, only 3 home runs. Been superb. 0.88 whip, 2.4 WAR. That's what you need from an ace, and he's giving it to him. It's funny to say at spot 3. The numbers he has are better than just being the 3rd best guy, but these other 2 have been kind of that great. Jacob deGrom for the Mets. ERA a little bit higher, as he sits at 2 than Yu Darvish. At 1.76, he's only 2-1 on this season. And it's getting to be a pattern for deGrom. He has been so good, but for some reason, when he's out on the mound, the Mets just don't win enough games. His record is never great, but it's not him. It's never him. 0.90 whip, 12.7 strikeouts a game, 1.4 WAR, 7 starts, 5 quality starts, 2-1, 58 strikeouts, and 41 innings pitched. He had a 14-game strikeout game against the Marlins, tying a career high. He has the ability to just make people miss. The fun stat for him, 30 swing and misses through 6 innings of a game he had. That is just unbelievable. You don't get guys to whiff that much. You don't see that happening. Yes, you might have your strikeouts, but that many whiffs is just unheard of. He is fighting to get another Cy Young, and he's going to be in the conversation once again because his stuff is that good. He is that good. Jacob deGrom cementing a dominant legacy. And then number one, no surprise. You could have predicted this from the start just because he has been the best this season. Shane Bieber for the Indians. ERA, 1.20. Best in the bigs. Strikeouts, 84. Best in the bigs. 52 and 2/3 innings pitched. Averaging 14.4 strikeouts per game. 2.6 WAR. He's only given up 13 walks to go along with those 84 strikeouts. 8 games started, 8 quality starts, 6-0 on the season. Shane Bieber is going to be in the conversation for the MVP. And he should be. He very well should be. It's not crazy to see that or have that conversation anymore. But this is just flat out dominant pitching. And a big reason why the Indians are playing as well as they are. When one guy takes them out, it keeps you in the game regardless. It's worth bringing up. It's noteworthy. Shane Bieber being the best. So that's the list that MLB.com put out there. I can't really even disagree with much. Maybe we can move around these guys in the top 10 a little bit, but these 10 names are great guys. Shane Bieber being 1, 2, Jacob deGrom, 3, Yu Darvish, 4, Max Fried, 5, Aaron Nola, 6, Trevor Bauer, 7, Lance Lynn, 8, Lucas Giolito, 9, Zach Gallen, and then 10, Clayton Kershaw. Starting pitching is good. Maybe we could talk a little bit about Zach Wheeler being out of there. He's been all right, doing well for the Phillies. Maybe Zach Davies a little bit. He's his guy not getting all the love he probably deserves. But I'm not going to argue too much with this top 10 list. It's a solid list, and I think it's something we can go with. And I'm interested to see how it changes for sure going into next season. Or next week, I should say, not next season. But we're going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to dive into some players that just are not getting enough love this season. You may even have some in mind yourself here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
It's safe to say this happens every single season. And I think it's very safe to say. There are just some guys that fall under the radar. You don't have them up there getting enough love that they deserve. This goes across all sports. This is nothing new here when it comes to looking to MLB, NBA, NFL, what have you. There's guys that don't get the love they deserve. So we need to take a moment and we need to start talking about some of these guys. Because, you know what? I love dishing out the love. I love giving it where it is needed. And just, I love to bring up all of these players. So we're going to start doing that. And I have a list written down here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 names. 9 names. See if we can get through all 9 in this segment because they deserve a little bit of love for this season. Starting off with one of my favorite players to watch, Mr. Trey Turner. Now, the Washington Nationals are sitting at 14-24 in the season, coming off a World Series. And it seems like it's a team that we don't talk about. It's the quietest champion. And injuries have been playing a big part in this. This is why this team is not getting the spotlight and the love it should. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking about Trey Turner and the season he's having, because the young shortstop in his 38 games is hitting .368. We had been talking about LeMahieu, Blackmon at the top of the batting average for most of this season. And just out of nowhere, sneakily, all of a sudden Trey Turner is sitting on top of the league. Not only is he hitting for that .368 average, 9 home runs, 22 RBIs, on base percentage of .421, 13 walks to 25 strikeouts. He protects pretty well. OPS 1.53, slugging of .632. Just been steady. And if he was on any contending team right now, we would be talking about him in MVP conversations. The problem is the Nationals are out of it, and it's even harder to talk about him considering how many teams in the National League are still in the playoff discussion. They have a 3.8% chance of making the playoffs, the Nationals right now. Have put up 181 runs, but they're negative 16. They just are out of it. They're not getting a lot of coverage, it feels like. But Trey Turner needs to be getting some love because what he's doing is pretty phenomenal. The next guy that he's up there in such statistics, Teoscar Hernandez. The Blue Jays are real right now. Incredibly real. They are tied with the Yankees for second in the AL East. The Yankees, the team that we thought was going to be so good, was going to run away with this thing, potentially the best team in baseball. Well, not only is Tampa Bay winning that division pretty easily, Toronto is now right there. One of the teams we talked about who could be exciting. Now, the Yankees are obviously having some injuries, but that doesn't take away from what Hernandez is doing for this team. The 27-year-old batting .308. Pretty darn good average considering where we've seen players all over the place this season. 14 home runs, tied for third, showing off his power. 27 RBIs. Been a promising player. I'm sure fantasy people are just loving the production they're getting out of Hernandez. He doesn't get you a lot of walks, but that's what happens when you got a slugger. His OPS isn't as great at .995 compared to a lot of other people that we're going to talk about, but that slugging at .637 is still pretty good. On base percentage isn't that much higher than his batting average. Batting average .308, on base .358. We talked about it, more strikeouts than walks. But that doesn't stop him from being a big-time slugger, putting balls in play, doing great things for Toronto. We talk a lot about these young guys in Toronto that have been great, these second-generation stars that are exciting, but Hernandez kind of sits on the outside looking in, but he's still producing at such a high clip that it doesn't even bother him at all. That's for sure. The next guy that we want to talk about when it comes to offensive production, the Chicago Cubs have a guy in Ian Happ who has been lights out. Lights out, 26 years old. There's a lot of names in Chicago. We know about Bryant. We know about Rizzo. We know about Baez. Ian Happ is their team MVP this year, batting .310, .674 slugging, 1.093 OPS, .418 on base percentage, 12 home runs, 24 RBIs. A big source of offense for this Cubs team as they are winning in the National League Central. Up 2.5 games, that Cardinals team is sneakily right there, not that far behind. But it looks like the Cubs are going to be holding on, at least for the time being, and Ian Happ just needs to be talked about more considering what he has been doing. I even was a little bit surprised. I haven't been watching the Cubs as heavy as I should. They keep winning. They're doing fine. The one thing that I noticed about the Cubs is the excitement in their dugout. Is there a team that's doing a better job just loving playing baseball this year than the Cubs? I don't know if there is. And Ian Happ just continues to produce and do great things. And we'll see if that continues on moving forward, because we'll definitely be watching this team in the postseason as well. The next guy we want to talk about, Houston's making a climb. Houston is sneaking up on Oakland. 3 games back. That's not that far. They can catch them. And Houston's loaded with tons and tons of names of guys you most likely knew. But the guy that's putting together some production, especially when it comes to batting in some runs, is Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, not a guy that I'm sure many people were expecting to be a big force of offense. You might have expected to have a good season for the Astros, but to be one of their lead guys, a little bit surprising. 23 years old. A lot of baseball ahead of him. Sitting right now 4th in the MLB with 35 RBIs. 7 home runs, 281 batting average. That'll be fine. Slugging at 585, so a little bit below what we're seeing. So there might be a little bit of flukiness with all the RBIs and having just great situations. On base percentage at 333. But when it comes down to it, when you got guys on base, it takes sometimes a special hitter to just get those guys running around. If there's something that frustrates me more in baseball, it has to do with running position, scoring, guys in scoring position, less than 2 outs, and strikeouts. People just getting strikeouts all the time. Kyle Tucker's doing a great job getting those runs around. And it needs to be mentioned. It needs to be brought up. 35 RBIs, only 5 behind our leader in Jose Abreu on the season, who's been absolutely mashing as of recent. That kind of just puts a little bit more in perspective how great Kyle Tucker has been for the Astros. So giving a little love there for Kyle Tucker. That's 4 hitters that I have. I have 4 pitchers I want to talk about, and I know I brought up 9 names, so I'm hoping I can get to this last name too. But we talked a little bit about 2 of these guys that are starters. Zach Gallen, for what Arizona has going on, they seem like they're going to be on the outside looking in. I'm really surprised they're the team in last place in the AL or NL West. Didn't think we'd see that one coming. We thought the offensive production was going to be there. We worried about their pitching. We were pretty right that a lot of their pitching is trouble. But Zach Gallen's been great. That 1.8 ERA. Only 1 win on the season. 7 quality starts. Only 1-0. Only 1-0. You're giving to your team, but your team is just not giving back. 50 innings pitched. Only giving up 32 hits on the year. Almost 10 strikeouts a game. It's in that category almost of that Jacob deGrom. I'm giving you quality innings, quality starts, what you need from me. And we're just not getting the wins on my record. It's sad, sad, sad to see. The next guy, Lucas Giolito. No hitters. Get your attention out there. So we definitely talked about him because of that. But he's got a lot more going for him beyond that. 3.29 ERA. Pretty good. That'll be good enough when you got the offense behind him that he does. 4-2 on the season. He's getting strikeouts. With that ERA being at 3.29, the thing that I like to see next to it is whip underneath 1. Not giving up walks and hits every inning. Almost striking out a little over 12, 12.3 per 9 innings. getting guys out in that way. 6 quality starts on the season. The White Sox got something that they probably didn't think was going to be as strong at the beginning of the year. They went out and got Dallas Keuchel. They were probably hoping that Kopech was going to be there. Getting another starter to be doing quality stuff for them is going to be big, and it's going to help them even more going into the playoffs. He has been great for them. Zach Davies getting traded from Milwaukee, getting out of Miller Park, might be one of the best things that's ever happened to him. Because pitching in San Diego, he has 8 games started, only considered 3 quality starts, but he's 4-0 and a 2.23. Sorry, 6-2. 2.23 ERA. Only 3 quality starts. Now, he's not a big strikeout guy. Never going to be, never was. 7.8 per 9 innings, 0.93 whip, a WAR at 1.4. San Diego going out to get Clevenger. Having some other pitching available to them. Paddock is there, who's been all right. Clevenger, and now Davies. It's what's holding back Mackenzie Gore from getting called up. It really is. And I just don't think he was a guy that was a part of this trade. I'm sure that the Padres were glad to be getting back a starter in Davies when they traded away Luis Urias for Grisham and Davies. But I didn't know that they were going to get 2 starters. Grisham holding his own in the outfield, and then Davies being such a strong starter. Early results looking like they're winning that trade. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more coming into it since Urias is so young for the Brewers, so that one's going to take some time. But talk about a win. Talk about a win of a trade when it comes to what is happening with Zach Davies in San Diego. The next guy that we need to talk about might potentially be the best relief pitcher in baseball this year. MLB.com, MLB Network, a lot of these guys are talking about him right now. He's getting a lot of love recently. So maybe it's not 100% fair to be putting him on here. But Devin Williams for the Milwaukee Brewers has been outstanding. Josh Hader is the guy at the end of that bullpen. We all know Josh Hader. We all know how unhittable he is. We know how great he is. And then you got a guy in Devin Williams, another draft pick for the Brewers made, developed, brought along, who has been amazing for them. 15 games already this season. That's topping the 13 he had last year. 0.53 ERA, 0.59 whip, 35 strikeouts in 17 innings. Say that again. 35 strikeouts in 17 innings. He is just getting people to miss at a high, high rate. And when you go out and you watch him, he has one of the best changeups in baseball. That thing is filthy, and he can just paint corners with it. I don't remember a time that I saw a reliever that great with a changeup like I'm seeing Devin Williams this year. And luckily, being a guy in Wisconsin, getting to see him a lot. The Brewers don't play with a lot of leads, it feels like, at least close game leads in some games. But Devin Williams then has just been superb when it comes to holding games and making hitters look silly. Silly out there. That's for sure. So those are 8 guys that are having great, great, great seasons under the radar. Not getting enough love. But I do have one more I want to talk about, just in the sense that we do love this player. He is definitely hyped up. When you think of his team, he's a top-notch guy. But I want to just throw it out there because I don't know if we're appreciating how good he is this season, even though we appreciate how good of a player he is all around. But Juan Soto has been kind of absurdly great. Like, absurdly great. Let's talk about his offensive numbers. Okay? He is sitting at 11 home runs. 11 home runs in 27 games. All of the other people ahead of him have played at least 9 more games than him. Mike Trout being at 9 ahead, 4 more home runs. So that's a start. He has the highest OPS in baseball at 1.21. The next closest is Ian Happ at 1.093. That's a pretty incredible gap. Slugging, he is leading the league at 758. The next closest, Ian Happ, at 674. That 354 batting average, and that on-base percentage is also 453. Another 100 points ahead. He has been outstanding. 17 walks, only struck out 16 times. More walks than strikeouts. Juan Soto has been potentially as well the best player in baseball this year. We talked about how great Trey Turner would be on another team. He'd be getting MVP conversations. This is something else that hurts him. There's another guy in his team who's just been absurdly better. And I don't know if we're talking enough about how great his season has been. Coming in late, only 27 games, and he's putting up crazy numbers. Crazy numbers. Not just his averages. Production as well, being behind so many of these other players. He is fun. He is young. He's only going to get better. I just hope he's healthy. I know that he's got some questions with the the Nationals right now. Stay healthy. Be good. Juan Soto, you are absurd, man. So that's my list of players just not getting enough love this season. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of guys out there. I have them written down. I had even some other names that I thought about talking about. If only we had enough time to hit everybody, but that's what we have. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back because we need to talk about storylines for the rest of the season that I have my eye on, and I think you should too. It's going to be fun to watch, fun to monitor here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Well, the stretch of the season where we need to start thinking playoffs and anything crazy that could possibly happen, well, it's approaching. It's approaching. We got teams that are hitting 40 games now, 2/3 of the way through the season. And with those 40 games being down, there's storylines that we need to start discussing. I know that I have a lot of things that I've been interested in and looking at because there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions going in to the end of the season. And I wanted to take the time to sit down, and discuss with you what some of those things are. So we're going to start things off with one thing that I think that is going to be the most interesting, at least in my eyes, is how in the world is this National League playoffs going to fall? There is really only one thing in this National League that I am pretty certain in when it comes to the playoffs. The Dodgers are going to be the number 1 seed. They are at 30 wins right now. They could lose the rest of their games. They're going to go 500. And most likely at that 500 record, they make the playoffs still. Their playoff percentage on ESPN right now, 100%. 100% going to make the playoffs. Okay. But going from there, we have a lot to discuss. Other teams that have high probabilities to make the playoffs. Well, the second highest right now is the Atlanta Braves at 98.8% chance. Just below them, the San Diego Padres, 98.7. So that's 3 teams so far. The Cubs at 96.8. So that's 3 of your division winners, 1 second place team. Then 89.9% chance. The Philadelphia Phillies, a team that has been surging 8-2 in their last 10, doing some great things. They're up there. They're only 2 games behind the Braves also at this point. That needs to be brought up. That's 5 of your teams. Cardinals considered 76, almost 77% chance of making it. That's 6 of your teams. So 6 teams right now in the National League considered a pretty high chance. After that, 45.5%. New York Mets. Surprised me a little bit. Definitely surprised me a little bit. They're sitting at 4th right now in the National League East. After that, 35% chance the Colorado Rockies. They've been stumbling, but there's still some belief they could make the playoffs. 34.3% chance. Oh, sorry. We got one that we missed here, too. 55% chance Milwaukee Brewers. So that one's above as well. So that was 7 teams above 50%. But that Brewers one is a little bit of schedule, but a little bit of maybe believing a September run is coming. That offense needs to get going. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The Cincinnati Reds are also at that 34.3% chance. Then the San Francisco Giants at 32.9%. So we're looking at currently 12 teams. Realistically, 12 teams. And also, we're throwing in the Miami Marlins in there, even though they're a little bit below the 30% threshold. 12 teams that still have a chance to all make the postseason. The Nationals aren't necessarily out of it, but they're 10 games back. Same with the Diamondbacks. It's hard to imagine the Nationals picking up a lot of games when you have to play an NL East desperate teams. The Braves are good. The Phillies are good. And then the teams over in the AL East are pretty solid. The NL West, having to claw up some ground for the Diamondbacks, just it doesn't seem realistic, and you feel a little bad for them because it's going to be hard. I don't know how this is going to break down. And there's so many teams you want to believe in. I want to believe the Marlins are going to beat it. But it's going to be a lot of movement and shakeups and just drama up until Game 60 in the National League. Very different from the American League. We feel like we have a grasp on the 8 teams that are going to make it. At least 7 of the 8. The National League is wide open, and over the next week or so, we are going to see maybe a little bit of a clearer picture, but there's some excitement in the sense that this thing could really go down to the wire. Really go down to the wire. And then, if it gets to be that case, these tiebreakers are going to be insane. There's not going to be enough like opponents or games against each other. How are we going to settle a lot of this stuff? What's going to be the reason one team makes it and another not? And I don't root for this to happen, but let's say the Cardinals can't make up all 60 games. A team that was kind of a little bit behind. Teams are at 40 right now. They're currently at 31. If they can't make this all up, what are we doing? What are we going to do to settle this all? It's definitely worth watching. Staying in that National League, how many games are the Dodgers going to win? 30-11. They were 30-10 coming in. Lost one tonight against the Rockies. If you would have told me a team was going to win 45 games this year, I would have thought you were nuts. Early projections had teams flirting with potentially 40, a little bit above. This Dodgers team is just so stinking good. And they might take their foot off the gas a little bit once things are clinched up, if they clinch the number 1 seed and everything, for health-wise. We might see that. But they have the chance to make a push for 45 or higher win games. 19 games left. I want to see someone get over that 40 mark. I really do. In a 60-game stretch, that's incredible. And this wouldn't even be one of the best 60-game stretch for the Dodgers in their history. They've had hotter in recent years. But I want to see how far can they go. Where are they going to get to? It's exciting. I'm not calling for us to completely ditch the 162 game season. I think that's a little insane. But I do think that a lot of these guys in baseball, higher ups, owners, are going to have to consider cutting the games down at the end of the season. I think they're going to have to consider and have the serious conversation because this sprint to the finish, 60 games, has brought some excitement. I definitely feel like I am more interested in everything going on because each game is that much more valuable. Each stint on the injury list is that much more of a drastic turn for a team. I wouldn't be shocked if they put together potential 100 games. Could they ditch 62 games? It's going to be a conversation I think worth having. But I want to see, can the Dodgers push hard? Can they push hard and get to that 45 potentially wins? Going to be something I want to watch. All right, we got to talk about the American League a little bit too. We just put a lot on the National League, so let's jump over to the American League because there is something over there that does excite me as well. And it, in particular, is the MVP race. Now, when we were talking about guys at the mid-season point, we talked about Brandon Lowe for Tampa Bay. And it was a hard decision to go with Brandon Lowe. Not because he's not a good player, not because he's not deserving. It's just it feels like the American League MVP is a little wide open. And I think the voting for this is going to end up to be very interesting. Not because there's no deserving candidates, like we said, but because two of the top candidates might be something that usually doesn't win the award. Now, we have a starting pitcher in Shane Bieber that is clearly the most dominant pitcher in baseball this year. It's not close. It's easily him. Since he has been so great, are we going to see more votes go his way? It's not fluky because, again, it can be done. We've seen pitchers win MVPs in recent years. But I remember at the start of this, I was hoping for, can we get some crazy award seasons? It's a little crazy to get a pitcher. Will it potentially be even crazier if the Twins win the American League Central and we have to start talking about Nelson Cruz getting MVP votes? Offensive production is valuable. What he's doing for the Twins, Nelson Cruz needs some recognition. Just a silver slugger almost doesn't feel enough. 329 batting average leads the team. 13 home runs leads his team. 29 RBIs leads his team. On base percentage 416 leads the team. Hits 46 leads the team. Doing this all at 40 years old. 1.059 OPS. 17 walks, 41 strikeouts. It is what it is. He's a slugger, but he still has a high batting average. We have had times in the past, in particular the name that comes to mind, David Ortiz, having great seasons, and the discussion of whether a DH can win the MVP. They're not out on the field as much as other guys. The argument then for a starting pitcher gets tough. A guy that does control a lot of the game when he's out there, but only playing one every 5 days, winning this MVP, almost makes me think that a DH should be getting a little more recognition, especially if they're out there all the time. Maybe they're only playing one part of the game, but now we're at a point where pitchers are just pitching, and while it's obviously a bigger thing than taking just at-bats, Nelson Cruz's production is up there, and he will have to be considered. I'm okay with the DH winning. I really am, especially if you are that big of a piece for your offense, for your team, and that's what he is for the Twins. He really is. Minnesota's won 5 games in a row. They're hot, 25-16. half game back of owning the AL Central. Will we see a DH finally win the MVP? This might be the season. And it excites me because we talked again, beginning of the year. Let's see some flukiness. Let's see some crazy stuff. This year already is crazy. This is the year where we're allowed to get crazier. Go for it. Give it a chance. Try it. Why not? Vote for Nelson Cruz to win an MVP. All right. My next question, what I'm watching, what I'm curious about this season. How big are injuries going to end up playing to how this season goes? Injuries are a part of the game. Every sport. It really is. But man, does it feel like it's altering things more this season than ever. Pitching, of course, we have pitchers go down, needing Tommy John surgery and all that stuff every year. But it feels like it's such a heavier load this year. A team like the New York Yankees falling down as far as they can because of injuries. It makes me wonder if we're being robbed of such a great team. We have so many seasons where teams go on slumps. But when they can fall back on that 162 games, they know they can come back around. But are we going to have what feels like a little bit of a different champion just because of how short things were? I hate to have the negative thoughts and think it could be the opposite way when reality, it should be considered tougher to win in such a more compacted season. Less days off, less breaks, more gotta go. But these injuries are definitely weighing on me a little bit. You can just see it with some players. And we can take this a step further too and talk about it. With all of these guys that we know, or thought at least coming into the season, that we're going to be stud players for their teams. I mean, that list is pretty long right now, growing. Bellinger with the Dodgers, Yelich with the Brewers, Altuve when it comes to the Astros. Chris Bryant hasn't been living up to these guys that were MVPs. Their numbers aren't what they want them to be. And not having the full season to kind of average out, it puts a different feel. I'm wondering how we're going to feel about the champion that we crown at the end of the year. The thing that's going to help this the most, though, and try to put this discussion to bed and push it away, is going to be the fact that 16 teams make the playoffs. Even these guys, these teams that struggle, that you were like, oh man, I don't know, they haven't looked like they're used to or what they should, they're still going to have the fact that a lot of these teams will sneak in regardless. We talked about all these teams in the National League. When it comes to the American League, you're going to have Tampa Bay, you're going to have New York, most likely. Looking like the Blue Jays, 3 good teams there. White Sox, Indians, Twins, 3 good teams you're going to have there, most likely Oakland, Houston. Highly unlikely another team sneaks in. I mean, outside of those, looking at the playoff chances in the American League, for other teams, just it doesn't look good. National League, this feels like some weaker teams are going to get in, but that's okay. We're going to see the better ones. Like an Atlanta Braves team, they've been battling injuries all over the place. Battling them all over the place. Are we going to feel like they got shorted because of this short season? It's going to be definitely interesting to watch. And the other thing that I'm curious about for sure is going to be this first round of the playoffs. How are we going to get seeded? Some of these teams are going to get a very tough draw of a first round matchup. Now, this would have happened regardless if we didn't go to 16 teams. If we had just the wild card playoff game, play-in game, along with the other division winners, they were going to be tough series anyways. That's how it goes. But getting a tough series in a 3-game series, or even potentially seeing a team with a couple good pitchers in a 3-game series, could alter things in a massive, massive way. As much as you want to think offense is taking over in the MLB, we need to bring up the fact that, well, a great pitcher can still win you a lot of things when it comes to the postseason. How is that going to be altering some series when they're very, very short coming to postseason time, October time? It's going to be a fun discussion to have there. I can't wait. The one thing that I'm looking forward to is actually finally seeing these playoff matchups, who they are, who you're seated up against, and then trying to break them down. It's going to be a lot of fun. This season already has been a lot of fun. I'm just kind of giddy talking about all this stuff, putting it out there, saying what's on my mind, getting it out, things that I'm looking for. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be watching the MLB, even with how we got here, the sadness of all the COVID talk and everything going on there. It's brought us a fun baseball season so far. And continuing on, we hope it keeps going. So that's going to be it for me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you again for listening. It means a great deal. If you could please leave a nice review, comment, a question, something you want us to cover, something you're looking forward to the rest of the season, some players you think that aren't getting some love and recognition, anything at all about the MLB that you can share and pass on our way would be greatly appreciated. I want to thank you again for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're listening. Signing off here, Collin Manley, the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.